Hey everybody, I hope you're doing great today. My name is John McLarnon. I'm the lead pastor here at Christ Church Camden. So glad that we get to worship together today. I don't know what your week has been like, but mine's been a little busy. There's been times when I've been a little distracted. I'm trying to touch base with all different kinds of family members and friends around the country, and I'm sure that you have found yourself to be a little out of sorts in your rhythms and just your way of life. And so I think it's a great time for us to be able to come together and to find some common ground today, just as we worship Jesus together. So thank you for jumping in today. Glad we could be together. We're going to be together about 30 minutes. We're going to have some worship. I'm going to teach a little bit through a familiar story found in Luke chapter 10. We're going to do some generosity and take communion. So with those things in mind, I want you to be prepared. So generosity is something we do every week, and that continues even though we're not meeting in person, that the doors of the building might be closed, but the church, the real church, is still operating. And so your generosity allows us to continue to meet needs and be prepared to meet future needs here in our community. So if you're not giving online, this is the perfect time for you to make that move. You can go to christchurchcamden.com and find ways to give there. A real easy thing you can do is to actually just get out your phone and text any dollar amount to this number, 84321, and you'll get some prompts that will lead you to set up an account and begin giving through text. Also want to give you a chance to prepare to take communion today. And so if you don't have supplies like on hand, just run and find what you can in the pantry or the refrigerator. Just get, if you got some juice and crackers, that would be perfect. And Jesus just says these things represent his body and his blood that was offered on our behalf. And so just get something together today and be prepared just to celebrate that and to thank him for that. And you can do that anytime during the service today that you choose to and feel led to. So I'm getting ready to head into the auditorium. If you want to stand, that would be fantastic. If you want to sit, that's great too. Thank you for jumping in today, and let's worship together.
Well, good morning, church. We are so happy that you joined us this morning. Come on, let's worship together. Let's raise our voices today. Sing it out. You are here, moving in our midst. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, working in this place. I worship you. I worship. Sing it again. You are here, moving in our midst. Oh Lord, I worship you. I worship you. You are here, you're working in this place. I worship you. I worship you. Come on, we sing.
Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are.
Come on, we sing. You are here, touching every heart. That's right. I worship you. I worship you. Oh Lord, you are here. You're healing every heart. I worship you. I worship. Come on, he's turning lives. You are here. You're turning lives around. I worship you. Oh yes, I worship you. You are here. Oh, mending every heart. I worship you, Lord. I worship you, Jesus. And we say,
Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are.
come on, we say this morning here. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. We sing again, He is Waymaker, Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. Oh yes, Lord. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who. Come on, you tell him today, that is who you are. 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 Oh yes, that is who you are. 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 Come on, we say, Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. We believe in, Lord. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. Come on, let's declare this words today. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it,
You're working.
that's right. You never stop. You never stop.
working.
No, you don't.
You never stop.
You never
You
stop.
working.
Hey, even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop.
You never stop working.
Come on, let's sing it a little louder. Even when I don't see it, Lord.
Even when I don't see it, you're working.
Hey,
Even when I don't feel it, you're working.
you never stop. You never stop working. You never stop. You never stop working.
Even when I don't see it, you're working.
Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop. You never stop working. You never stop. You never stop working. his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turns his face toward you and give you peace. Come on, let's sing it again. The Lord bless you and keep you, make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turns his face toward you and give you peace. Sing amen.
Favor be upon you and 1,000 generations, and your family, and your children, and their children, and their children. May his favor be upon you and 1,000 generations, and your family, and your children, and your children, and your children.
May his favor be upon you and 1,000 generations, and your family, and your children, and their children, and their children. May his favor be upon you and 1,000 generations, and your family, and your children, and their children, and their children. Come on, say, may his presence go before you, let's sing it today. May His favor, may His favor be upon you and 1,000 generations, and your family, and your children, and your children, and your children. May His presence go before you, and behind you, and beside you, all around you, and within you. He is with you. He is. Come on, we say, in the morning,
and the evening, and your coming, and your going.
in your living, and rejoicing. He is for you. 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 He is for you.
So the last few weeks we've been asking this question, who's your one? And when we ask that question, what we mean is, if that was some language that we used around our church, that hopefully all of us could respond with the name of one person that we've been praying for, that we've been building relationships with, that we are sharing our story with when the opportunity arises. And I want you to keep praying for that person and seeking those opportunities, but I want to shift the conversation just a little bit more to the situation at hand, so that when the world reopens again in the future, whenever that is, we can go back to that. But I want to suggest that your one right now for the foreseeable future is either living with you or they're next to you. Now, last year at this exact same time, we did a teaching series called Love Where You Live, and it was a look at a conversation that Jesus had with a religious lawyer in Luke chapter 10, and the story that Jesus tells to answer one of his questions. The religious lawyer came to Jesus asking, hey, what do I need to do to have eternal life? Or how could I be saved, Jesus? And Jesus turned it back on him and he said, well, what do you think? And he answered it this way. This is Luke chapter 10, verse 27. He said, to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself. Now, Jesus repeatedly summarized all of his teachings and essentially all of the Old Testament laws down to these two things, that we should love God with everything. That's like command 1A. And then 1B would be to love your neighbor. This man thinks he probably had that one covered, and so he asks Jesus, well, who is my neighbor? And then Jesus tells a very familiar story. He says that a Jewish man is traveling from Jerusalem down to Jericho, and he was attacked by a gang. He was stripped, he was beaten, he was left for half dead on the side of the road. And we know this to be a really bad and dangerous road, but he's not the only one who's traveling on this road. Just so happens that a priest came walking by, and he would be like the lead pastor of the temple, so to speak. I picture him maybe texting, walking along. He came across this guy, and he's like, wow, I am not dealing with that one today. And he passed by on the other side of the road. Then a second person came along. He's a temple assistant, right? He's kind of like an assistant pastor or something like that. And he actually takes it a step further. He says it kind of looks interesting. Hey, let me walk over and maybe kind of see what this guy's sign says. He takes a look, and then he decides, no, I'm not doing that today, and he walks over to the other side of the road. And then Jesus says, a despised Samaritan. And this is the guy that the Jews hated, right? The guy that nobody else would probably stop and help if the roles were reversed. This guy, Jesus says, sees the man, he stops, he feels something for this man. His compassion motivates him to do something. He goes over to the man, assesses the situation, administers first aid, puts him on his own donkey, takes him to the closest motel, pays for his bill, and actually says, hey, I'll actually come back later to cover any additional costs. Now, I find the whole conversation just to be fascinating, particularly because remember the question that he asks, Jesus, who is my neighbor? And Jesus redirects the whole thing to a whole different question when you get down to verse 36, and this is the way the passage reads. It says, which of these three do you think proved to be a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of robbers? I want you to notice the very first question is a question testing limits. Jesus answers with a question about love. The answer, the one who showed mercy to him, he said. And then Jesus tells him, well, I want you to go and do the same. Now, you might probably don't remember this one. I have a weird memory, and I got notes in the file somewhere. But listen, you can always go back and watch old messages on our website. It might actually be a really good series for you to revisit at some point, maybe while you're at home or you have some spare time. But there were a number of new insights for me back in that series a year ago, and some takeaways for sure. I just want to guide our thoughts this way. A number of questions that came up for me were things like, what if when Jesus says to love your neighbor, he means our real, literal, next-door neighbor? And I remember one of the questions I began asking about a year ago is this one. What if God places us in certain paths, or you could say in certain places, so that we can help specific people? The book of Acts chapter 17 certainly indicates that God has some control over where we live. It actually says this in Acts 17 verse 26. It says that he, talking about God, decided exactly when they should live, and he decided exactly where they should live. It seems like God determines time periods, boundaries, locations, maybe even neighborhoods. And why does he do that? The very next verse says this, that God did this so that people would seek him, and perhaps they would reach out for him and find him, that they would find him even though he's not far from any of us. It just makes me ask, what if God has bigger things in mind for the places that we live and work and go to school and play? I mean, you picked your apartment or your house because of the location, the price, the floor plan, the school system, maybe the amenities, and maybe you chose where you live for very specific reasons. But what if God has placed those people in our life so that at a time like this one, right, the one that we're all experiencing right now, that we're perfectly positioned to be able to respond and help those who have a need? I love this quote from G.K. Chesterton where he says, we make our friends, we make our enemies, but God makes our next door neighbor. You could conclude from the story that God has maybe placed you on a path, and God has placed people on that path so that by intersecting with your life, people would seek him. Or you can think about it this way, that God has determined when and where you live, and God wants to use you, God wants to use me as a catalyst for our neighbors to know something about him. I've always wondered, why doesn't the priest stop? Right? Why doesn't the temple assistant just pause long enough to lend a hand? Maybe it's fear. I don't know. Maybe it's time. Maybe it's prejudice. I don't know why they don't get involved. I guess it's likely for the same reasons that I don't get involved at times. It's just easier not to. So then why does the Samaritan stop? I mean, maybe he's just an awesome guy who helps everybody. I'm convinced, and I don't know if I can totally prove this from the story, but I'm convinced it comes from a place of understanding, of knowing what it's like to actually be someone in need. So what if one of the best motivations to help the people around us is to remember what it's like to be helped? I think we lose a little bit of the power of the story if our immediate reaction is to jump to, hey, I should be like the Samaritan. And yes, for sure, I think go and do likewise is a point of the story. But I wonder if the starting point might need to be that we understand Jesus maybe to play the role of the Good Samaritan, which means that we're all just guys and we're girls and we're men and we're women who are on the side of the road. And I think some of us might be able to listen today and go, I feel that way, like that's me. And you found your way in here today, or you stumbled across this broadcast, or you saw it on a friend's page. I just want you to know that you should reach out to us. And we believe that Jesus still rescues people who ask for help. I know there's a lot of us who hear that story and we go, I used to need help, and we got it, right? We know what it's like to be rescued and to have been given some hope. And I just want to offer that until we see Jesus as our Good Samaritan, we'll never have the kind of love for our neighbors that the gospel demands. Because when you've experienced the radical love of a Good Samaritan, like Jesus, you can then turn around and model that to someone else. And now we can actually go and do what he did and give that to those people who are around us. Wednesday, I sent out an email to our whole church. If you're on our mail list, you got it somewhere. If you didn't receive it, all of that info can be found on our Facebook page or our church website, christchurchcamden.com. We have a whole page dedicated to the news and some resources to help you at this time as we navigate kind of this whole new world that we're all in. One of the very practical steps that I gave you in that email is something I want to encourage and challenge all of us to take at this time. We attached to that message, and you can find this on the website again, a card, a flyer of sorts that looks like this. It just says, "How can I help?" It's a simple flyer that you put your info on, you check off some boxes here, things like, hey, I could pick up groceries, I could walk your dog, I could just pray for you, whatever you're willing to do, and you give it to your neighbors. You could put it on their door. You can put it in an airplane form and fly it over there. You could tape it to their window, whatever it takes. But you just pray over this, pray for them, be ready to help, and let's just see what God does at this time. Now listen, I don't say enough profound things or feel important enough to ever quote myself, but this statement comes right out of my notes from exactly 1 year ago at this time, where I said this: a good neighbor who loves Jesus and loves people will be a good church program or event every single time. I think I believe that now more than I did a year ago. Because at a time when we have no church events, we have no church programs, at a time when we're not doing things that people would normally consider to count as church, what we can do is exactly what is needed. We can love, we can serve, and we can help the people that we live with and live near. Come on, friends, it's time that we love where we live.
Let's sing it out. There's a grace when the heart is under fire. You know the way when the walls are closing in. When I look at the space between where I used to be and this reckoning, I know I will never be alone. There was another in another in the waters, holding back the seas. Should I ever need reminding of how I've been set free? There is a cross that bears the burden, where another died for me. There was another in the fire. Oh, we thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. Come on, let's sing the second verse. Oh my dead, oh my dead, left for dead beneath the wise. Hey. I'm no longer a slave to my sin anymore. Thank you, Jesus.
Cold in the space between
What remains of me and this reckoning. Either way, I won't bow to the things of this world. 'Cause I know I will another in the fire. Oh, there is another in the fire. Oh, there is another in the fire. Oh, there is another in the fire. Oh, I can see it. I can see the light in the darkness. I see darkness bound to him. I can hear the roar in the heavens. I see space between where I stand. I can feel the ground shake beneath us as the prison walls cave in. Nothing stands between us. Nothing stands between us. Oh, we thank you, Lord. We thank you, Lord. I'm gonna sing this out today. There is no other name but the name that is Jesus. That's right. He who walks us to this and will be through it all. Come on, tell him today. So come on, man, the space between all the things I see and this reckoning. Come on, say. I know I will never be alone. I know, I know. I know I will never be alone. There'll be another in the fire. Standing next to me. Another in the water. Holding back the seas. Should I ever need reminded? How good you've been to me. Count the joy come every battle. 'Cause I know that's where you'll be. I can see the Lord. I can see the light in the darkness. As the darkness bows to Him, I can hear the roar in the heavens. As the space between where I stand, I can feel the round. Oh Lord, as the prison walls cave in, nothing stands between us. Nothing. Come on, sing it again, say. There'll be another in the fire. Standing next to me. There'll be another in the water. Holding back the seas. Should I ever need reminding? How good you've been to me. Count the joy come every battle. 'Cause I know that's where you'll be. Come on, tell 'em. Count the joy come every battle. 'Cause I know that's where you'll be. I count the joy come every battle. 'Cause I know that's where you'll be. Come on, sing it again. I count the joy come every battle. 'Cause I know that's where you'll be, my Lord. I count the joy come every battle. 'Cause I know that's where you'll be. Hey.
Hey, thank you for joining us today for worship. I just want to give you a couple of quick next steps that you can take. If you're watching on Facebook, make sure you hit like and maybe even share so that some of your friends can enjoy the service today as well. And then I want to encourage you to head over to our website, christchurchcamden.com, where you will find a page that's dedicated to all of the resources and videos that we're making available right now. And so there's things for your kids there, there's ways to engage your neighbors, and then you'll also be able to find the links for generosity. So thank you again for joining us today. If you want to get some really quick updates on news that's happening, you can actually text the word updates to 912-400-0405. Thanks again for joining us, and be a great neighbor